sits on the oak table in the hallway, just a piece of cheap plastic with a cracked face, a digital watch, the kind you buy at a gas station for $10 because you don't care if it gets smashed or lost in the mud. It's been sitting there for 12 years. My wife, she knows not to move it. She dusts around it. She treats it like a relic, like it's holy. But it isn't holy. It's cursed. Most days I walk past it and I don't look. I learned that trick early on. You learn to put blinders on in your own house. You learn to navigate your own living room like it's a minefield, stepping around the things that might set you off. But some nights, usually when the house is too quiet, usually when the rain is hitting the roof and the sound is just close enough to static, I stop. I pick it up. It weighs nothing, literally ounces. But when I hold it, my hand drops. It feels like I'm holding a tank. It feels like I'm holding the weight of 7 men. The battery died 4 years ago. The screen is blank. It stopped counting time, which feels right, because for them, time stopped a long time ago. For me, I'm still counting. I'm still aging. My hair is getting gray. My knees ache when it rains. I'm getting older. They never will. They stay 22. They stay 19. They stay frozen in that red dirt, waiting for a chopper that already came and went. Holding this watch, it brings the smell back. That's the thing nobody tells you about the aftermath. It's not the images. The images fade. They get blurry like an old photograph left in the sun. But the smell, that stays. The smell of diesel and burning plastic. The smell of old sweat and copper. It hits me the second my thumb brushes the scratched plastic of the casing. I remember when Miller bought this thing. We were at the PX, laughing about something stupid. Probably about how the chow hall food was going to kill us faster than the enemy. He held it up, grinning. He said he needed something that could take a beating. He said he wanted to make sure he knew exactly what time it was back in Texas, so he could picture what his girl was doing. He set the dual time zone. One for the sandbox, one for Houston. He checked it constantly. It became a tic, a nervous habit. He'd tap the face, look at it, and smile. She's waking up now, he'd say. Or, she's getting off work. It was his anchor. It was the thread that tied him to the world where people didn't carry rifles to breakfast. Now, I have the anchor, but the line is cut. I put the watch back on the table. The plastic makes a hollow sound against the wood. The silence in the house rushes back in to fill the space. My kids are asleep upstairs. They don't know about the watch. They don't know about Miller, or Davis, or Hernandez. They just know Dad gets quiet sometimes. They know Dad doesn't like fireworks. They know Dad sits on the porch at 3 a.m. watching the street, waiting for something that isn't there. I try to go to the kitchen to get water, but the air feels heavy, thick. It presses against my chest. This is the hardest part, the transition. 1 minute you're in a suburban hallway in Ohio, looking at a utility bill, and the next, you're back there. The geography overlays. The hallway stretches out and becomes a dusty alleyway. The shadows under the coat rack turn into silhouettes on a rooftop. It wasn't even a special mission. That's the part that eats at me. It wasn't some high-speed raid. It wasn't the movies. It was routine. We called it a presence patrol. Just walking. Just showing the flag. Letting the locals know we were still there. We had done it 100 times. The route was cleared. Intel said it was cold. Intel was always saying it was cold until the heat melted your boots. I remember the heat that day. It wasn't just hot. It was aggressive. It felt like the sun was angry at us. You couldn't breathe without tasting dust. It coated your teeth. It sat in your lungs. We were tired. It was near the end of the deployment. We were already talking about home. We were talking about steaks and beers and cars we had checked out. Just a little bit. Just enough. That's the guilt. The math that never balances. Did we miss a sign because we were thinking about the flight home? Did I miss a wire because I was thinking about my bed? We were moving in a staggered column. Standard spacing. Keep your interval. Don't bunch up. I was point. I was supposed to be the eyes. I was supposed to see the disturbance in the dirt. I was supposed to see the wire. I was supposed to keep them safe. Miller was behind me. I could hear him. He had this way of walking, a heavy step, and he was humming. He was always humming. Something country. Something slow. We stopped near a market. It was deserted. That should have been the first sign. The markets were never deserted. Usually there are kids. Kids asking for candy. Kids trying to sell you cheap sodas. But that day, nothing. just trash blowing across the hard-packed earth. A stray dog limping in the distance. I signaled for a halt. I remember raising my fist. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a held breath. It was the silence of a trap waiting to snap shut. I turned back to look at them. Just a quick glance. Checking the line. Miller was looking at his watch. I can see it so clearly it hurts my eyes. I can see the sweat dripping down his nose. I can see the dust on his eyelashes. He was looking at his wrist, tapping that cheap plastic face. He looked up at me and winked. He mouthed the words. Lunchtime. He meant lunchtime in Houston. He meant his girl was sitting down at a diner somewhere ordering a burger. He was there with her. He wasn't in the dirt with us. For a split second, he was home. I turned back around. I scanned the rooftops. Nothing. I scanned the windows. Nothing. But the hair on the back of my neck stood up. You know that feeling. Every soldier knows it. It's primal. It's the lizard brain screaming that something is wrong before the conscious mind can explain why. The air felt charged. Electric. Like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm, but tighter. I wanted to say something. I wanted to yell, "Get down." I wanted to tell them to spread out more, but I didn't. I just stood there, scanning, trusting the routine, trusting the intel. I took a step forward. Just one step. My boot crunched on some loose gravel, and then the world ended. It didn't start with a sound. It started with a pressure wave, a physical punch that hit me from behind, lifting me off my feet like I was a rag doll. The ground disappeared. The sky disappeared. There was no up or down, just force. Then came the noise. A sound so loud it wasn't a sound anymore. It was a physical pain in my skull. It shattered the world. I remember hitting the ground. I remember the taste of blood. I remember the ringing, that high-pitched whine that drowns out everything else. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't answer. I was paralyzed by the shock. I lay there, staring at the sky. The dust was falling like snow. Gray, heavy flakes of debris drifting down. I couldn't hear screaming. I couldn't hear gunfire, just the ringing. I rolled over. It took every ounce of strength I had. I had to see. I had to know. The dust was thick, choking. I couldn't see 10 feet in front of me. I crawled. My rifle was gone. My helmet was askew. I just crawled back toward where the squad had been, toward where Miller had been standing, toward where the joke about lunchtime had been made 10 seconds ago. The crater was massive. The road was just gone. I tried to call out names. I tried to say Miller. I tried to say Sarge, but nothing came out. My throat was full of grit and smoke. I coughed, spitting up black mucus. I reached the edge of the hole. There was nothing there. I don't mean they were dead, I mean there was nothing. The violence of it. It takes a minute for your brain to process the absence. You expect bodies. You expect medics working. You expect chaos. But there was just a smoking hole in the earth. And silence. The ringing in my ears started to fade, replaced by a terrifying quiet. No moans. No calls for help. I scrambled down into the dirt. I was frantic now, digging with my bare hands, burning my fingers on hot metal. I had to find them. They had to be here. You don't just vanish. 7 men don't just vanish. I found a boot. Just a boot. I found a piece of a radio. And then, I saw something glinting in the dirt. A small flash of reflection in the gray dust. I reached for it. My hand was shaking so bad I could barely grasp it. I pulled it out of the rubble. I wiped the dust off with my thumb. It was the watch. The cheap, plastic watch. The strap was broken. One of the pins had snapped. The face was cracked down the middle, but it was still in one piece. I stared at it. I couldn't understand. How? How could this cheap piece of plastic survive when men made of bone and muscle didn't? How could this $10 toy be here and my brothers be gone? I looked at the display. The numbers were flickering, fading in and out. 12, lunchtime in Houston. It flickered once more and then the screen went blank. I sat there in the dirt. I sat there holding that watch while the sirens started in the distance. I sat there while the backup arrived. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just held on to it, because if I let go, if I put it down, then they were really gone. As long as I held it, I was still in the moment before. I was still in the joke. A medic tried to take it from me later. I almost broke his arm. I wouldn't let them touch it. It was all I had left. It was the only proof that they had existed at all. That was 12 years ago, and I'm still holding it. Standing in my hallway tonight, the house is cold. The memories recede, pulling back like a tide, leaving me stranded on the beach of the present day. I look at the watch in my hand. It feels heavier than it did a minute ago. I carry them. That's what the therapist says. She says I carry them with me. She calls it survivor's guilt. She has fancy words for it. Integrated grief. Post-traumatic processing. She doesn't understand. It's not just guilt. It's an unpaid debt. I'm living the life they should have had. I'm eating the meals. I'm sleeping in the bed. I'm watching my kids grow up. Miller never got to see his girl again. He never got that burger. He got a hole in the ground and a plastic watch that outlived him. Sometimes, I wonder if I'm the ghost. Maybe I died in that hole too. And this quiet house, this safe life, maybe this is just a dream I'm having before the lights go out. But then I feel the sharp edge of the broken strap digging into my palm. It scratches my skin. It hurts. The pain is real. So I must be here. But being here doesn't mean I'm home. I put the watch back on the table, carefully, facing the door, always facing the door, like it's waiting for him to walk back in and pick it up, like he's just going to stroll in, dusty and tired, and say, "Thanks for watching that for me, brother." But the door stays closed. The lock is turned. I walk into the living room and sit on the couch. I don't turn on the TV. I just sit in the dark. The silence of the house isn't the same as the silence of the desert, but it's close enough. It's a waiting silence. And in the quiet, I start to think about what I have to do tomorrow. I have to go to work. I have to smile. I have to pretend that the volume of the world isn't turned down to 0. But there's something else. Something I haven't told anyone. Not even my wife. I've been hearing things lately. Not voices. Not hallucinations. I'm not crazy. It's a sound. A very specific sound. It happens when I'm driving. Or when I'm in the shower, or when I'm mowing the lawn. I hear a hum. A low, country hum. Just for a second. Just long enough to make me freeze. And yesterday I found something in the garage. I stood there in the garage, staring at the cardboard box on the shelf. It was marked, "Gear do not touch," in thick black marker. My handwriting. But I didn't remember writing it. I didn't remember taping it shut. It sat between the holiday decorations and the old paint cans, covered in a layer of dust that looked like gray felt. I pulled it down. It was heavy. Not physically heavy, but it had that same density as the watch. The gravity of memory. I used a pocket knife to slice the tape. The sound of the tape ripping was loud in the enclosed space. It sounded like tearing fabric. It sounded like a uniform ripping. Inside it was a mess. Old socks. A boonie hat stiff with dried sweat. A pouch that still had sand in the bottom seams. The smell hit me again. That distinct mix of canvas, CLP gun oil, and stale dust. It filled the garage instantly, overpowering the smell of gasoline and suburbia. And at the bottom, tangled in a charging cord, was a small silver digital voice recorder. I froze. I remembered it instantly. Miller had bought it the same day he bought the watch. He said he wanted to record the sounds of nature to send to his girl as a joke. He'd record us snoring, or the mortars falling in the distance, or just the wind howling through the wire. I picked it up. The metal was cold. It felt foreign in my hand, like an artifact from a different civilization. I pressed the power button. Nothing. The battery was dead. Of course it was dead. It had been 12 years. I should have put it back. I should have taped the box shut and walked away. I should have gone upstairs, crawled into bed next to my wife, and closed my eyes. That would have been the smart thing to do. That would have been the safe thing. But I couldn't. The silence in my head was too loud. I frantically searched the garage drawers for ALAOA batteries. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped 2 of them. They rolled under the workbench. I cursed. I was on my hands and knees on the cold concrete, groping in the dark for a battery. Desperate. I needed to hear it. I needed to know if the humming was in my head or if it was real. I found them. I jammed them into the back of the recorder. The battery cover snapped shut with a plastic click. The screen flickered to life. A pale blue light. File 1. Date, July 14th. 3 days before the explosion. My thumb hovered over the play button. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that hurt my chest. I took a breath. The air in the garage felt thin. I pressed play. Static. Just a hiss of white noise. Then, a fumble, the sound of the microphone being handled, and then his voice. "All right, take two," Miller said. His voice was clear, shockingly clear. He sounded young. He sounded alive. He didn't sound like a memory. He sounded like he was standing right behind me. I spun around. Instinct. I expected to see him leaning against the workbench, grinning, but there was only the lawnmower and the shadows. I turned back to the recorder. "So," Miller's voice continued, "Sarge is over there looking at the map like he actually knows where we are." "Hey, Sarge." I heard my own voice in the background, distant, annoyed. "Shut up, Miller. Check your sector." "He loves me." Miller laughed into the mic. "He just doesn't know how to show emotion. It's a leadership thing." I sank down onto the concrete floor. My legs just gave out. I sat with my back against the tire of my car, clutching the recorder with both hands. "Anyway," Miller said, his voice dropping to a whisper, I'm recording this because the sunset is actually kinda nice tonight. You'd like it, babe. It's purple. Like bruised purple. It's pretty." There was a pause. A long pause. I could hear the wind in the recording. I could hear the background noise of the fob. A generator humming. Someone coughing. Then the humming started. He started humming that tune, low and gravelly, off-key. It was the same sound I'd been hearing in the shower, the same sound I'd been hearing in the car. I wasn't crazy. I was remembering. I listened to him hum for a full minute. I closed my eyes and the garage disappeared. The smell of oil vanished. I was back on the roof. I was back in the heat. I could feel the grit on my skin. I could feel the weight of the armor on my shoulders. "You know," Miller said, breaking the song, "Sarge is worried. He thinks something's off. He's got that look. The I smell trouble look. But we're good. We're invincible, right? That's what they told us." He laughed again. A nervous laugh. "I got the watch set," he said. "Dual time. I know you're sleeping right now. But when this watch hits 0700 your time, I know you're waking up. It's like I'm waking you up. Even from here." The recording ended. The blue light went out. Silence rushed back into the garage. But this time the silence was heavier. It was crushing. I sat there in the dark, and I broke. It wasn't a movie cry. It wasn't dignified. It was ugly. It was a physical expulsion of 12 years of held breath. I curled forward, my forehead resting on my knees, and I shook. I gasped for air, but my lungs felt like they were filled with cement. I cried for the joke about lunchtime. I cried for the watch. I cried because he was right. I had been worried. I had smelled trouble, and I still walked them right into it. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the empty garage. "I'm so sorry." I played the recording again and again. I listened until I memorized the cadence of his breath. I listened until the battery indicator started to flash. And then something shifted. On the fourth listen, I heard something I hadn't caught before. Right at the end, after he talks about the watch. "He's a good man," Miller said, referring to me. "He's gonna get us home. And if he doesn't, if something happens, I know he'll carry it. He's strong like that. He's the mule. He carries the heavy stuff so we don't have to." The recording clicked off. "He carries the heavy stuff so we don't have to." I stared at the device. The words hung in the stale air. He knew. Somewhere, deep down, he knew. And he wasn't blaming me. He was giving me permission. He wasn't haunting me. He was trusting me. The guilt I had been carrying, the survivor's guilt, suddenly felt different. It didn't feel lighter. It was still heavy. It was still a tank on my chest. But the nature of the weight changed. It wasn't a punishment. It was a payload. I was the designated survivor. I was the keeper of the archive. If I crumbled, if I let the darkness win, then Miller really died. As long as I stood up, as long as I remembered the sound of his humming and the way he checked that cheap plastic watch, he existed. I wiped my face with my sleeve. The fabric scratched my skin, rough and real. I stood up. My knees popped. My back ached. I felt every year of my age. I put the recorder in my pocket. I put the box back on the shelf. I turned off the garage light. I walked back into the house. The hallway was quiet. The shadows were still long. I walked to the oak table. The watch was there. The face was blank. The plastic was cracked. I didn't walk past it this time. I picked it up. I held it in my palm. I felt the weight. But instead of feeling the drag, the pull toward the earth, I felt the anchor. An anchor doesn't just hold you down, it holds you steady. It keeps you from drifting away in the storm. I looked at the blank screen. Euro 700, I whispered. She's waking up. I put the watch back down, not as a cursed object, but as a monument. I went upstairs. I walked into the bedroom. My wife was asleep, breathing softly. The room was warm. It smelled like lavender and safety. I sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't wake her. I just sat there, watching the rise and fall of her breathing. I watched the way the moonlight hit the floor. I am here. They are not. That is the math. It will never balance. It will never be fair. But I am not a ghost. I am the witness. I lay down. I didn't close my eyes immediately. I listened to the house, the refrigerator humming, the wind outside, the settling of the wood. And underneath it all, faint but present, I could still hear the tune. I let it play. I didn't try to shut it out. I let the humming fill the room. It wasn't a haunting. It was company. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in 12 years, I didn't see the flash. I didn't see the crater. I saw the purple sunset. And I slept. If you are carrying something heavy today, if you are the one who made it back when others didn't, you don't have to put it down. You just have to learn how to carry it so it doesn't break your back. You are the keeper of the story. Type respect to honor the ones who didn't come home and the ones who are still carrying the weight.